بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. وبعد. This course lecture is on a slight schedule change here. It's listed, of course, as being the awliya or something. Yes, no. Inshallah ta'ala, that lecture will be held tomorrow. We're doing a slight switch here. The lecture that we're doing right now, inshallah ta'ala, will be Abandonment of the Sinful Heretics, which is a lecture originally was scheduled for tomorrow. It's being held today. But the one that's going to be held today will be held tomorrow. Inshallah, the same basic time slot. So, with that, turn it over to Sheikh Ali.
Alhamdulillah. نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونتوب إليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم وبعد. I think now you brothers have heard 3 lectures regarding this topic of al-wala wal-bara. The first lecture was a general introduction into this theme. The second lecture was the rights that the Muslim has upon another Muslim. And yesterday I spoke to you about the awliya of ar-Rahman and the awliya of shaitan. Today's lecture is a lecture which maybe some of you are familiar with and perhaps some of you have never heard of before. And that is regarding the abandonment or the hijr of those people who commit sinfulness and those people who innovate or commit heresy in the religion. We all know that a Muslim has a right upon another Muslim, and among these rights is that a Muslim is not allowed to cut off himself from another Muslim for more than 3 days, as the Prophet ﷺ told us, that it is not permissible for a Muslim to not speak to his fellow Muslim for more than 3 days, and the best of them is the one who begins first in salam. This is one of the rights a Muslim has upon another Muslim. Another Muslim is not allowed to be angry with you to the extent that he just cuts off his relationships with you. So he doesn't speak to you, doesn't say Salaam alaikum to you and so forth for more than 3 days. Now, however, though, this rule, this right that Muslims have upon other Muslims, there's an exception to it. And that exception comes with when dealing with people who are committing sinfulness, public sinfulness, as we will see, and when people are innovating in the religion. If we look at the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, if we look at also the practice of the earliest Muslims as set up, we find that they used to sometime take positions regarding certain individuals and would cut themselves off from these individuals for a long period of time. However, though, at the same time, this rule or this regulation has its conditions. And so therefore, if it is applied in a manner which is against the regulations of the Sharia, it becomes impermissible. Now, some of the extreme applications of this idea or this concept of the Sharia, this practice of forsaking the people of sinfulness and the people of heresy, I will discuss in that lecture, which was printed in the pamphlet, which will be given tomorrow, concerning al-wala wal-bara, the misunderstandings concerning al-wala wal-bara, as seen by some of the misunderstandings of the Shia and the Khawarij. So we'll discuss that tomorrow. But what we'd like to do today is discuss how this issue, just from the source of the Sunnah and the Hadith, okay? And give some of the Sharia regulations regarding this. And then as terms of the people's misunderstandings regarding this issue, like those of the Khawarij, we'll pick that up tomorrow. Okay? Now, when we usually say the term hijrah, we usually think of it in the concept of moving from one country to another country. One land to another land. That's the lecture which comes this afternoon. We're talking about here, we're talking about the abandonment of hijrah. Leaving something. And we know that, for instance, a Muslim leaves that which Allah forbids. And that's not what we're talking about. But here we're talking about leaving individuals. And yesterday we talked about there's awliya Rahman and awliya Shaitan. So when is it permissible for a Muslim to abandon another fellow Muslim? Because that Muslim does sin or does add something to religion. This is what we'll be discussing today. First of all, we should know that this is something which is mentioned in the practice of the earliest Muslims, and also can be found in the Hadith. We find, for instance, that the Prophet ﷺ was angered with his wives, and he left them for 29 days. The Prophet ﷺ separated himself from his wives for 29 days, for a whole month. And this is reported by Al-Bukhari in the book of marriage, Kitab al-Nikah, that the Prophet ﷺ, as reported by Hadith of Anas, that the Prophet ﷺ stayed away from his wives for a month, and he stayed in a room, and then on the 29th day, he went back, and they said to him, the companion said, but you said you were to stay away from them for a month. The Prophet ﷺ said that, in the shahra, tis'un wa ashrun, that the month can be 29 days. So here we find that the Prophet ﷺ left his wives, and we gain this from the hadith, the ayah of the Qur'an, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that we can leave our wives from sleeping with them if they're disobedient. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us first to give them a mu'idha, a admonition, and then if they do not respond, we can separate ourselves from them by not sleeping with them, and then lightly strike them as the third and final matter. And so therefore the scholars have understood this, that for instance, the scholars have understood that it's permissible for us to leave one's wife if one wife does something disobedient. Ibn Taymiyyah was asked, as an example, regarding a person's wife who does not pray. A person has a wife and the wife doesn't pray. Should the husband order her to pray? And if she does not pray after the husband orders her, can he split off from her? So Ibn Taymiyyah responded, it is required for him to order her to pray. And indeed, that he should order her to do everything which he is capable of ordering her to do. And if he doesn't order her to pray, who's going to order her to pray? And also that if she insists in not praying, he should divorce her. And that this is required. Because leaving prayer is to be punished in agreement with the Muslims. Indeed, the scholars have said that those who leave prayer, abandon prayer, are to be killed. And however, they have questioned if when he's being killed for leaving prayer, if he's being executed for leaving the religion as apostasy, or is it just a punishment to him? And there's two opinions. So the point is that here's an example of something from the Sunnah where this is a sin, leaving prayer, and here the husband is told to command his wife, and if she doesn't pray, to divorce her, which is a complete separation in this case. Likewise, we know from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ that the Prophet ﷺ, this is a hadith, an incident from the Prophet ﷺ, which I'm sure all of us have heard of, that when 3 Muslims didn't go to the Battle of Tabuk, and they had the ability to, when the Prophet ﷺ returned from the Battle of Tabuk, and he had ordered all the Muslims to wage jihad against the Christians. This is something which is a very good proof for those people who believe in the Abrahamic faiths, and we should all be together and so forth. That here the Prophet ﷺ ordered every single Muslim male who had the ability to go forth to fight who? The Christians in the Battle of Tabuk. And at that time, when the Prophet ﷺ returned, the hypocrites came and they would give their excuse to the Prophet ﷺ as to why they did not go to the Battle of Tabuk out with them. And however, though, 3 of the Prophet's companions who had the ability to go told the Prophet ﷺ that they would not, that they did not go out to the battle, and that they had no excuse. Nothing. There was no reason preventing them. They were not ill, or they did not have the means to go forth to jihad. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so it was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ that he should cut himself off, and he ordered all the Muslims not until Allah reveals something regarding it. And so the people would not even say Salaam Alaikum to them. All Muslims in Medina would not, and even their wives wouldn't deal with them at all. Until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down the verses in Surah At-Tawbah, clearing them and accepting their repentance from them. And then they were given the news, and the Muslims started to deal with them. So this is an indication, a proof that a person can leave somebody sinful, that the Imam of the Muslims can order, and in order to stop them from that sinfulness, to abandon somebody, or leave them, without any sort of dealings or any sort of interaction and so forth, if he commits a sin. And likewise, the Sunnah we find, or at least in the, that we find in the Sunnah, that the Prophet ﷺ said regarding the Dajjal, that whoever hears of his appearance, that he's coming, because he's going to be traveling throughout all the cities of the earth and so forth, that he should stay away from him. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, for Wallahi, by Allah, that a man will consider himself a believer and will eventually end up following a Dajjal because of the confusion that is surrounding a Dajjal, whether he is truly Allah, or if he's not Allah, he's a false claimant to divinity and so forth. What is the point from this hadith? The point is from the hadith is here, the Prophet ﷺ told us that if we hear of a Dajjal, to stay away, not to get near. So this is an indication to stay away from people of evil. And so therefore this is a proof and evidence that one should stay away from people of evil. And likewise we find that after the Prophet ﷺ's death, the companions of the Messenger of Allah and the earliest Muslims used to practice this. They would abandon those people of evil and those people who used to add to the religion of Islam. There is an example, for instance, between Aisha radiallahu anha and her nephew Abdullah ibn Zubayr. Abdullah ibn Zubayr, one of the Prophet's companions, was also her nephew, because Zubayr ibn al-Awwam, the Prophet's cousin, married Asma, the sister of Aisha. Aisha and Asma are both daughters of Abu Bakr. So Asma, the sister of Aisha, the daughter of Abu Bakr, married Zubayr ibn al-Awwam. And from the two, they had a son. He was the first child born to the Muhajirin in Medina. His name was Abdullah ibn Zubayr. So his aunt was Aisha. His mother is Asma. And also Abdullah ibn Zubayr at one time, during a fitna, became the Khalifa of the Muslims in Mecca and in Medina and also in Iraq. And so therefore, one time he was told that Abdullah ibn Zubayr said regarding something that Aisha did, that if Aisha does not stop, I'm going to confine her to her house. Now, he was a Khalifa, okay? But this was his aunt. And at the same time, she's a wife of the Prophet ﷺ. So she's the mother of the believers. So besides being his aunt, also she's the mother of the believers. So when Aisha heard this, she became very angry, because Abdullah ibn Zubayr overstepped his authority in this case, okay? So she said, Ahuwa qala hadha? Did he say such a thing? So it was said to her, yes, he did say something. So she said, by Allah, I have made an oath, a vow to Allah, that I will not speak to Ibn Zubayr forever. And at the same time, so that Ibn Zubayr, after a while, when he realized that he did a big mistake, it became very hard for him that Aisha, the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, and also his aunt and the mother of the believers, did not speak. He would send people to Aisha, trying to tell them to forgive him, until finally, when Aisha would always say that she would always respond to these people, by Allah, I will not break my vow to Allah, and I would never speak to Ibn Zubayr. Until finally, after a number of times, two people were kept on talking to Aisha until finally Aisha accepted, and she broke her vow. And so, since she broke her vow to Allah in order to make a kafara, expiation for breaking her vow to Allah, she set 40 slaves free. I mean, even though the sunnah is that you don't have to set 40 slaves free, but she set 40 slaves free because it was something very big for her to break a vow to Allah. what do we learn from this? Okay, we learned that she took a position from Ibn Zubayr, her nephew, when Ibn Zubayr tried to step over and said that he was going to confine her to her house if she didn't stop doing something, because this was something that he added, which is not far from the religion of Islam. It's not his right to do. And likewise, one time, Abdullah ibn Umar ibn al-Khattab's son, Abdullah ibn Umar, one time one of the tabi'in came to him and said to him, "Oh, Abu Abdurrahman," which was his kunya, that there are some people who have appeared amongst us, meaning in the city of Basra, who read Qur'an and follow knowledge, and however they believe that there's no such thing as qadr. They don't believe in qadr. They say that Allah only knows of something after it occurs. So Ibn Umar said, if you meet them, if you come across these people, this is the first hadith in Sahih Muslim if you read it, tell them that Ibn Umar is bari from them. He has nothing to do with them. And that they have nothing to do with me. And tell them that Ibn Umar swears that if one of them was to give as Uhud mountain in gold, Allah would not accept it from him until he believes in Qadr. So what is the issue here? The issue here is that here's Ibn Umar, one of the Prophet's companions, issues this mentioned in Sahih Muslim. When he was told that people disbelieved in Qadr, he sent a notice to them. He has nothing to do with them, and they have nothing to do with him. And also, he considered them to be unbelievers, saying that if they were to give the mountain of Uhud in gold, it would not be accepted from them until they believed in Qadr. So here's another example of Ibn Umar taking a position here for somebody making bid'ah in the religion. Likewise, one time it was said to him that somebody said, that Ibn Umar said, the Messenger of Allah said, do not prohibit a man should not prohibit his wife from coming to the masjid to pray. A man should not prohibit his wife from coming to a masjid. One of Ibn Umar's sons said, I'm going to prevent them. And so Ibn Umar said, you tell me you're going to prevent your wife from coming to the masjid, and I tell you that the Messenger of Allah says, a man should not prevent his wife from coming to his masjid, I will not speak to you the rest of my life. And so here Ibn Umar is taking a position from one of his sons who did not want to follow the hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said a man should not forbid his wife from going to the masjid, and his own son said, by Allah, I will forbid him. Why? Not because he was trying to disobey the Prophet ﷺ, but because he felt that that hadith might have been spoken in some context, and that now the context is different, and that there is fitna, and so forth, and then therefore women should be prevented from going to the masjid. So, I mean, this is probably his reasoning behind it, but still, nonetheless, Ibn Umar took this position when the man would challenge a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Likewise, Abdullah ibn al-Mughaffal, another one of the Prophet ﷺ's companions, one time saw a man, throwing pebbles. And the man, Abdullah ibn al-Mughaffal, told him, do not throw pebbles, for the Messenger of Allah has forbidden throwing pebbles, and has said it does not result in hunting an animal, nor does it result in killing an enemy, like in jihad. But all it does, it breaks teeth and makes eyes, pluck out an eye. It says when a person takes a rock, a small rock like this, and throws it, he's not able to hunt with it, okay? Nor by throwing a small rock you're going to kill somebody in jihad, with it. So you need to practice, like, shooting arrows or something like that. All is going to happen is that you might throw the rock, and it might end up that somebody might hit somebody, break his tooth, or it might hit someone in the eye, and he would lose his sight because of that. So the man continued, he saw the man another time throw a pebble. And he said to you, I told you the Messenger of Allah ﷺ forbade from throwing pebbles, and you still throw pebbles? By Allah, I'll never speak to you again. So this is another example of the Prophet's companions taking a position about those who disobey the Messenger of Allah. And likewise, the Prophet ﷺ has told us in some hadith that there would appear a group of his ummah called the Qadariyah. those who deny qadr. And he said that if they become sick, this hadith is in Abu Dawud and elsewhere, do not visit them. If they become ill, do not visit them. And if they die, do not pray janazah upon them. So here the Prophet ﷺ is taking a position regarding this group, a stray group. And likewise, regarding another stray group, the Khawarij, the Prophet ﷺ said that were I to come across them, I would kill them to the degree like Ad and Thamud were destroyed. In the sense, I would not leave a single one of them left. And the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever kills them, he will have a reward. Those who kill them until the Day of Judgment. So here the Prophet ﷺ has commanded the fighting of this group. So therefore, if you read the books of the Sunnah, explaining in Hadith, you will find in it always a chapter concerning forsaking the people who cause innovation, the people who cause sinfulness, the people who add to the religion of Allah, the people who openly disobey the Prophet ﷺ or Allah Azza wa Jal. And this is in the books of Hadith and also it's in the books of Aqidah. For instance, if you look in the book, which I guess is most of the brothers, just as an example, it's not the only book in Aqidah, but it's a book which is available in the English language, the explanation of the Sunnah by Al-Barbahari. I guess most of you brothers have seen that book, right? If you look in the end, there's a whole section about leaving the heretics and the evil people and so forth. Okay. So we've shown that this is part of the religion. This is part of the Islamic religion. That even though, in general, we are not allowed to abandon a Muslim for more than 3 days, there is an exception to it. As we saw the Sahaba did. That they would say to some people, I will not speak to you forever. But what are the Sharia rulings concerning this? I mean, what are the different rulings concerning this ruling? I mean, is it general? And anybody who commits a sin, or anybody who commits a bid'ah, is to be left and we're supposed to say, I'm never going to speak to you again? Or are there stipulations to this? Are there conditions? This is what we'd like to now investigate. Now, we should understand what is the purpose of, and what is the wisdom behind forsaking or abandoning a person who does sinfulness or does heresy, bid'ah, innovation in religion. What is the wisdom behind it? The wisdom behind it is to correct them. The wisdom behind it is to correct them so that they would return back to the truth. And because this was taken from the Prophet's practice, the way that he dealt with those 3 men who didn't go out in the Battle of Tabuk, who committed that sin. And they had the ability to go. The Prophet forbade the Muslims to deal with them, to talk with them, until their tawbah was accepted by Allah. And when their tawbah was accepted by Allah, and the verses from Surah Tawbah, in the 9th Surah of the Qur'an were revealed, the Muslims started to deal with it. So the purpose, the wisdom behind these rulings, is in order to correct, to amend. Likewise, when the Prophet ﷺ dealt with his wives and left them, didn't have relations with them for a whole month. Also, the purpose behind this was to correct and to amend, because he was angry with them. And so therefore, the issue in this is a cure, an amending. And for this reason, al-hijr from the person who commits sinfulness or from the person who's a heretic, the aim behind it is to correct that person's behavior. In the same way, a father might sometimes beat his son in order to correct his behavior. As the Prophet ﷺ said, command your children to pray at the age of 7, and if they do not pray at the age of 10, then what? Beat them. But since it is a corrective cure, since al-hajr is for the aim of causing a change in behavior, if it doesn't cause that, as we will see from the statements of the scholar, but causes the opposite effect, it becomes impermissible. And so therefore, for instance, the Prophet ﷺ said, if your child doesn't pray at the age of 10, beat him. Does that mean that a person can beat them to death? Will they die? Huh? No, of course not. Because here, it goes against the aim. The aim is that you teach the child to pray until he's 7. And then when he reaches the age of 10, and he's not, praying, okay, you beat the child in order to make it certain that he understands he has to pray. But you wouldn't beat the child to the point where you would, cause internal injuries and kill the child. And so therefore, the issue of al-hajr, the idea behind it is that the idea was to make hajr until the person made tawbah. And we find an example also from the seerah, or the life of the Sahaba. During the time of the Sahaba, there was a man who was called an Asbagh. And this person used to like to ask questions concerning the Qur'an. To the degree that he would ask questions, not for the sense of like learning knowledge, but just asking questions in order to try to understand things which we would not know the meaning of. So he one time asked something, and Umar beat him on his head until he started to bleed. And then Umar made an announcement to the Muslims that no one should be taught to an Asbagh. And to the degree, and Asbagh was living in Basra, of course Umar was in Medina, that an Asbagh would come and find a group of Muslims gathering, and he would want to sit with them, and they would get up and leave. And they would say, the order of the commander of the Muslims, the emir of the Muslims. And the Muslims, they would apply what their umara, their emirs, commanded of them. Until an Asbagh, about a year later, came to Umar and said, everything that was in my head has now gone. So, the point is that he, realized that, he repented from this type of questioning and this type of delving into the unseen, which we have no knowledge of. I mean, it does not mean that a person cannot ask questions of the Qur'an, but there's some questions that nobody can answer. So if you try to look for the meaning behind this, you're just going to go astray. This is something which only Allah knows, and there's just no way you can learn. Like, for instance, somebody asks you when the Day of Judgment is. Well, you could say to him, for instance, we know that the Prophet ﷺ said the Day of Judgment will occur on a Friday. This is a hadith. And we know that before the Day of Judgment comes, it will have certain signs. One of it is that the Antichrist will appear, one of it that Isa and Mary will come back, and so forth. I mean, certain things will occur. But besides that, when it's going to happen, what year is going to happen, only Allah knows. It's something that neither the prophets know, neither the angels know. So if a person keeps on trying to say, well, I'm going to calculate and try to figure it out and so forth, in other words, there's some sickness in his heart. I mean, he doesn't want to stop at that which, he does not know. I mean, that we do not know. Nobody knows, because it's something which Allah has not told any of His creatures when the Day of Judgment is. Okay? So an Asbagh was asking that type of questions. It doesn't mean that the questions he's asking, for instance, you can't ask somebody what is the meaning of a verse in the Qur'an. So Umar, so he came to Umar in the end, right? And he said, everything which was in my head has now gone. So the point is that the Tawbah occurred. I mean, when he realized that nobody was going to talk to him, and that he was an outcast in society, he left those ideas, returned back to the Sunnah. In the same way it occurred with the Prophet ﷺ and those three men. They made Tawbah to Allah, and when Allah accepted their Tawbah, the Muslims dealt them. So the point is that this hajr, this abandoning of the sinful people, and the abandoning of the people who commit bid'ah, heresy, is for the purpose of curing, is for the purpose of correcting and rectifying. Now, and for this reason, it means that when a person is not going to be corrected or rectified in this bid'ah, from his bid'ah, by leaving him alone, it becomes forbidden to leave him. Like times when most of the people are in bid'ah, are in heresy, or most people are indulging in sinfulness. See, in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, right? Everybody, when he commanded them to go to the Battle of Tabuk, all of Medina went towards the Battle of Tabuk, except for the hypocrites and these three Muslims who had no reason, and they apologized to the Prophet ﷺ, asking Allah's forgiveness for their sin. So you might imagine a whole city of Medina And likewise, all the Bedouins who lived around that were all commanded by the Prophet ﷺ to go to the city of Tabuk to meet the Christian army, which was planning on invading Arabia for fighting fighting the Muslims. And so the Prophet ﷺ called all the Muslims to go out forth to this battle, and only 3 Muslims stayed behind. And the rest who stayed behind were known hypocrites. And the hypocrites in Medina were no more than 70 men. I mean, they weren't like, don't think they were thousands upon thousands. Just they were known men, 70 or odd men. So you might imagine that those people who stayed behind, I mean, besides the women and the ill and the children and so forth, those who cannot go out and fight because of blindness or whatever, I mean, were just very few men who could not go out and fight. So in this case, by them not doing it, and the people following the Prophet ﷺ, it really affected them. And their tawbah was so sincere that Allah mentioned it in the Qur'an. I mean, Allah could have told the Prophet ﷺ, right, that their tawbah has been accepted. And the Prophet ﷺ could have just told the people that Allah. But Allah Himself mentioned their tawbah in His book. Because the sincerity and the lesson which we learned, that Allah Himself addressed this issue. He didn't leave the Prophet ﷺ to address it on his own in the Sunnah. Even though the Sunnah, in its essence, is revelation from Allah. And likewise, when Umar ibn Khattab did this with an asbagh, the same thing also occurred. That he, after a year or so, whatever time period, gave up what he thought and didn't continue with those ideas. And so therefore, the point is that when the people of ignorance, or the people of sinfulness, or the people of bid'ah, heresy, are the majority, it now becomes forbidden for you to make hajr of them. Why? Because you will not, by abandoning them, they will not feel in any way any sort of hardship, any sort of reason to reform their behavior. It's just like, for instance, let's say you have a big household. You have 4 or 5 kids. One of the kids messing around in the house. So the parents take a position, and they punish the child by some sort of treating him, differently. He can't do this, or he can't go out. The child will get the message. Because he's a minority here, in the house. And so therefore he will change his behavior, so he's not dealt with in that manner. But when the majority of the people, let's say there's 1,000 Muslims, and 990 of them are in bid'ah, and only 10 are upon the Sunnah. You leave those 990, they're not going to feel anything concerning that. Or if they're engaging in sin, they're not going to feel anything because they still have the support and relationships and so forth. They will not feel anything. And likewise, the second condition is then, so after that first condition is that it has to change them, that if it results in them increasing in evil, because the idea is to cure them, so they turn back. But let's say the person's faith is weak, and so that by leaving him, he's going to become more evil, and he's going to result in going further in sinfulness and further in bid'ah. Then it becomes forbidden also to leave him, because the idea is to rectify him, not destroy him. And so therefore, the father who beats his son at the age of 10 for not doing prayer, or his daughter, and beats him to the degree that he ends up killing them, this is going too far. Because the idea is to rectify them, and to do it other than that is not permitted. And so therefore, a person, if you're to leave somebody who does sinfulness, let's say there's a person who, he owns a store, and in that store he sells beer, and he sells, ham sandwiches or whatever. Okay? These are a very common thing in America. A Muslim has a store, he sells beer and ham and so forth. So, if by leaving him, by making hajr to him, because that's sinfulness he does, is going to result in him doing greater evil, alright, then it becomes forbidden for you to leave him. Because the idea is to rectify. And likewise, even if that the person is not going to necessarily increase in evil because of the weakness of his faith, but in the sense that it's not going to stop anybody else from following that bid'ah or that sinfulness. Since by taking a position concerning this person, it's not going to change anything for the other people. It becomes forbidden in this case. So therefore, even though this is part of the sunnah, hajr of the, or abandonment, we might say in English, of the sinful, or abandonment also of the heretic, the person who commits bid'ah, it comes under the general principle of the Sharia, which is seeing the benefits gained and the harms resulting. If the benefits gained are greater than the harms resulting, it's from the sunnah and it's from the practice of the Salaf. But if the benefits gained are less and the harms resulting are greater, it becomes forbidden. And in this case, to be kind to the person and to be gentle to the person and to keep your relations with them become the person becomes required in this case. So now somebody might ask, well, how would I know whether the benefits gained would be greater or the harms resulting would be greater? How will I know? And this is what knowledge in the Sharia leads to, and knowledge of the situation. This is what the knowledge and the wisdom and the piety that a person has leads him to be able to make this judgment. And so this is why these things should be left to be judged by the scholars when it should be taking a position from a person and not. Because most people don't have that knowledge of Sharia to weigh when will the balances, the benefits gained and the harms resulting occur. And likewise, or even if they might have the knowledge, they might not have the foresight and the wisdom because of unfamiliarity with the situation of the people. And so therefore they will not make good in their judgment. Unlike a situation which you might do in your household. In your household, for instance, if you know the religious reason, the religious rulings, right? You could take a position maybe, for instance, toward your wife. If you told her to do something, I mean, let's say like you told her not to listen to music. After, explaining to her and giving her time and so forth, she's still maybe listening to that music. So, you give her a maw'idah, an admonition. Like her say, fear Allah. Allah does not like this. This is something forbidden. You should stop this, and so forth. And you come back and you find her also that she's listening to music. So you decide that you're going to not sleep with her. Have relations with her for just send a signal to her. This is a serious matter. This is a case over here. It's something which a person could do. Because he would be aware, if he's a mature person, he's maybe aware of the faith of his wife, the level of her faith. He might be aware of her strength in her religion. So he would know that by taking this position, whether or not she would, would it break her or would it make her reform? If he felt it might make her, just pick up her bags and walk out of the house, then he would realize that this is not this position to take. Okay? But if he knew that his wife is, for instance, that they have a strong marriage, and that she prays, and that she follows, Islam and so on, but she falls short like this, and this is going to make her really understand that, this is something which is not tolerable, and that's going to make her stop, then, he might take that position. Just like a person might do with his child. Sometimes you might be very strict to the child, you might hit the child. Sometimes you might let the matter go, depending upon, judging if you just, the position you take, if the child will respond positively, because the idea is you want to correct the behavior. Okay. But now when we come to the issue of the society as a whole, taking a person in the masjid and saying, look, we're going to take a position concerning this individual, or concerning this group, this should be left to who? The scholars. Because they best can judge, this situation of the person's bid'ah and the person's, the evil which might result, and so forth. So, and in this case, what our position would be is that we would not engage in that sinfulness or that bid'ah on a personal level. And since we know that something is bid'ah, that something is sinfulness, we would not engage in that. We would not do those acts ourselves, because we know that Allah has forbidden that. But rather, whether we should take a position concerning that group or that people and cut ourselves off from them, in the sense of neither saying salam to them or neither visiting them or so forth, this would be something which would be judged by the scholars to make that decision. Those people who are in authority in the Ummah in a political sense. I mean, if that situation was existing that you had something like that. But a person who has authority, for instance, like in his own household, or for instance, a person who is, let's say, in charge of a school, and there's a student who comes, let's say you're a principal of a school, and a student comes, is always brought in every day by the teacher that the student is doing something. The teacher, or the principal of the school, might take a position concerning that child. Let's say the child, for instance, will not go, this child, because of this, will not go on the field trip, this week they're going to go to some park or whatever, because, your behavior, you're not going to go. You're going to have to stay in the school and do some extra work or whatever. And then maybe the child will think, well, then therefore I shouldn't do this, and so forth. Because you have a position of authority here, and so forth. But in the position of the society as a whole, since none of us have a position of authority, and if none of us are scholars, then we shouldn't take this ruling outside. Anyway, that's some of the regulations concerning al-hajr. So to summarize these, that we should understand that, as we explained, I guess, yesterday to some degree, that a person has, a Muslim might do some sinfulness, he might do some heresy, some bid'ah, and so therefore he would have good and evil in him. And then therefore we support his good and we take a position against his evil. Right? And sometimes taking a position against the evil is to the degree of abandoning that person, whether it's out of sinfulness or whether it's out of bid'ah, adding to the religion heresy. Okay? But that this would be done by a person who has some sort of position of authority, like the husband, like the father, like the person who's in charge of the school, like a scholar, like a ruler, and so forth, who has some sort of authority. And that we understand from this that the idea behind al-hajr, or abandonment, whether it comes from people who are sinful or who commit bid'ah, is in order to rectify their behavior and to bring them back to sunnah, and to bring them back to obedience to Allah. So therefore, if the issue is such that the majority of the people are people who are engaging in sin, or are engaging in bid'ah and heresy, or the majority of the people are ignorant, and then it becomes forbidden for us to deal with them in this matter, because it does not end in rectifying their behavior. All it does is cut us off from giving them da'wah. Yeah? And likewise, if the person who we want to make abandon his religion is weak in his religion, in the sense that he doesn't have strong faith, and whether he or she is to be abandoned due to his sinfulness or due to his adding to religion, making bid'ah, and then by abandoning him you're going to cause more harm to this man or this woman, for the sisters, let's say, then in this case it does not become permissible to abandon him, because it's going to result in a greater evil for that person. And for this reason, we always we can say that this principle in the Sharia is based upon the rule of gaining the most benefit and preventing the most harm. And so therefore one has to weigh the benefits gained by this and the harms caused, and whatever is the utmost, based upon that, one takes a position. That is, in summary, this principle of the Sharia, which is an extension of the issue of al-wala wal-bara in one aspect. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. And if there's any questions, we might pick them up concerning this or other topics. If we exhaust the questions on this. Sometimes you need to just do your behavior. And I remember, for instance, I guess many of you brothers probably have now met Sheikh Jaffa, Sheikh Hadith, right? He was last year at the last conference. I remember one time him telling me, there's another conference that occurs in the United States, that I haven't gone to before, but it's basically because of, these conferences get very expensive, so unless I'm being invited and they pay for me, I usually can't make it. But anyway, he used to tell me always, go to this conference. I used to tell the Sheikh, I said, Sheikh, well, going to this type of conference or this organization is really going to be of no benefit. And they're not going to allow me to speak, and even if I was to say something, they would tell me, well, we don't allow for lectures outside of the lecture hall and stuff like that. He said, go to that conference and just pray at the conference. Because when people see you pray, and this is a scholar speaking, this is the difference, the wisdom of a scholar. People see you pray, they're going to notice that the way you pray is different than the way they pray. Because you will be praying according, outwardly according to the sunnah. So some people are going to come up and they're going to ask.
They're going to notice something about you. You have a beard, maybe the way you dress, the way you pray, and so forth. One or two people will come in and want to speak to you. You can speak to them. This is a way of doing it now. Maybe one of those 1-2 people will then go back and speak to them. See? So the point is that sometimes, just in your action, I remember one time, a brother was with some brothers, and this brother didn't pray. And he came to visit the city. So one brother who does pray brought him over to this brother's apartment, and the man didn't pray. So when it came time for Salat al-Asr, the man didn't pray. Came Salat al-Maghrib, the man didn't pray. Salat al-Isha, didn't pray. Salat al-Fajr, didn't pray. And the man stayed with this group of brothers for a day or two. And yet, those brothers, he would see them. They would make adhan, they would make a khamne, they would pray. And yet they treated him very well. I mean, they fed him well, they were very kind to him and so forth. When he went back to his town, he called his friend. He said, do you know the place where a masjid is? I want to start praying. Because of the behavior. So the point is that that behavior has a lot to do with the da'wah, not only just the talking. And then sometimes people in action will be impressed enough to change. As far as the first issue about taking a decision, sometimes, a person should take a decision upon knowledge. Okay? And he should use whatever argument is of knowledge. Whether that argument is an argument of reason or an argument of proof from the Qur'an and Sunnah. I mean, for instance, if you were to talk to an atheist, and the atheist says, I don't believe that Allah or God exists. So, you can't read him a verse in the Qur'an that says, that Allah is the creator of everything, because in the first place he doesn't believe in Allah, and he doesn't believe that the Qur'an is the words of Allah. So you come to with an argument of reason. For instance, you say to him, okay, if you were walking on a street, and you saw a pin, would you have any doubt that somebody have made that pin? Somebody must have, produced that pin? I would say no. So how is it then that this universe, in its complexity and its vastness and its greatness, came about without somebody putting it? This is an argument of reason, okay? So here you can use these arguments. So if you come across people who don't, for instance, believe in the Qur'an and the Sunnah, or have weak faith in the Qur'an and Sunnah, and use arguments of reason, okay? And those arguments of reason are of sound reason. They're correct arguments in and of themselves. One can use them, even if that person doesn't believe in the Qur'an or the Hadith, or believes with a weak faith, for instance, or believes in one and exclusion to the other, like believes only in Qur'an, doesn't believe in Hadith. Okay, like for the person who believes in only the Qur'an, doesn't believe in Hadith. Use an argument of reason. Okay, Allah tells us in the Qur'an to pray. How do we pray? It's been mentioned to us. Allah tells us to obey the Prophet in 30 passages. How do we obey the Prophet? These are arguments of reason from the Qur'an, because he accepts the Qur'an, he doesn't accept Hadith. But if you have no knowledge in that issue, neither a knowledge based on a proof of the Qur'an or the Sunnah, or no knowledge in terms of an argument of reason, of rationality, which is sound, then one should not take up a position. Silence, one should be silent. Allah has made us responsible for it. If one's forced to take an issue, in a sense, sometimes you come to a position in life where you're forced. You cannot delay the issue. You're forced to say something then and there, or do something then and there. Then one should exert his utmost to make the right decision. In this case. Sometimes, you put in position in life where they're forced to take a position, you're forced to say something. And so therefore you should try your best to take the best decision, which you know from the Qur'an and the Hadith. But, if you're not compelled to take a decision, or not compelled to say something, then you should remain silent and do not take a position, do not do something, unless you know it's truth. Because you're not responsible. You're not responsible to answer every single question asked of you. Somebody comes and asks you a question concerning Islam and you don't know the answer from, you're not responsible of taking, the question, right? But there might be sometimes a situation where you might be responsible to take an action. You're on the battlefield of jihad. And it's a question where it's life and death, and you must take a decision. So you take a decision to do something. And that turns out to be against the Sharia, for instance. Okay. And so in this case, I mean, inshallah ta'ala, you've made ijtihad, and if you're wrong, you'll have one reward. If you're correct, you have two rewards. And there's no sin involved. But if you're not in the situation of being compelled, under compulsion, there's no reason to take a statement or make a position. So, I mean, let's take the first point. The Prophet ﷺ said, بَلِّغُوا عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً. Spread upon me even a single ayah. Even a single ayah. Single statement. Ayah here doesn't mean personal harm, it means statement. So, even if you have one piece of information that you know is correct, and you have no doubt about it, you should teach it to people. You can explain it. There's no doubt. For instance, somebody, you can, I'm sure every single one of us now can explain Islam to a non-Muslim. In Islam, we worship Allah alone. We believe Allah sent prophets. The final prophet is the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. We follow the Prophet. We don't worship him, but we worship Allah alone, who created us all. We believe there's a day of judgment. People in the day of judgment, though some people will go to paradise, some people will go to hell. We also live a life of, try to live a life of morality and try to do good. Some of the acts of worship we do is we pray 5 times a day, we give charities, we fast from Allah, we make hajj. Some of the things of the haram. I think every single one of us who are Muslims are able to, explain that much, right? But now you come and you talk to a Christian priest, and he asks you some theological issue. What do Muslims believe regarding this issue, which is mentioned in the Bible, or which the Christian theologians have argued about, and so forth? A Muslim, if he knows the answer, he should speak. If he doesn't know the answer, he should say, Allah knows. I'm not a scholar in my religion. I don't know. However, though you can perhaps ask somebody, if you know somebody, bring it to him or whatever, and you can write a letter to somebody if there's nobody to ask. And here's what I'm saying. So, this is the thing. As far as the issue about drawing the line, we should never get tired of giving da'wah. Don't forget Noah, alayhi salam, the first messenger was for 950 years. 950 years, just to people to Tawheed. And so, until he got tired and he asked Allah just to destroy the people on the earth. So, but 950 years is a long time, right? So, we shouldn't get tired if you go to a person 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times. Why not? The Prophet ﷺ was for 13 years giving da'wah to the people, just to Tawheed. Why not? But the point is that in Islam, let us imagine that we are all people of Tawheed, and one amongst us does shirk. If you take a position, he might rectify him now. But if the majority of the people in the Ummah are committing shirk or committing bid'ah, then we need to be patient and teach them until we bring them back to the Sunnah and to Tawheed. Al-Barbahari. couple of issues here which we don't want to mix up with. Listening to the preaching of these people is, as I mentioned, is forbidden. That's not what we're talking about here about al-hajr. And we're talking about also the point about not talking to them, not giving them da'wah, not visiting them, not giving them salam, cutting oneself off from them. This is a different issue. Moreover, that the issue of debating, we should never debate with anybody. Imam Ahmed was one time asked, he said, by a man, said, I'd come and I'd sit amongst the people of the Sunnah, who are, people who are not upon the Sunnah, they don't know the Sunnah, and I remind them with one of the Sunnahs of the Prophet ﷺ. Should I, and they don't accept it from me, should I argue with them? Ahmed said, no. Just tell them the Sunnah. The man said, should I not then argue and debate with them regarding the matter? Ahmed said, no, just tell them the Sunnah. The man said, well, should I not debate with them? Ahmed said, I think you're just a man who likes to argue. So the point is that one should not engage in debating with people. I mean, if you come across a people who do not follow the Sunnah, you tell them what the Sunnah is. And just leave it at that. Now, if you're teaching somebody, and the person is asking you because he wants to learn, or, because he wants to find out the truth. So like he asks you, he says, okay, well, why should we follow Sunnah, Hadith? I mean, not because he wants to debate with you, but he says, why should we follow Hadith? I mean, is not Muhammad ﷺ just a man? I mean, just like any of us are. Huh? So, in this case, you might answer him, say, yes, it's true, the Prophet ﷺ is a man, like us. But he's different, in the sense that he receives a revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, unlike us. This is the difference between him and us. And Allah in the Qur'an has told us that He does not speak out of His own desire, but only what is revealed to Him. So even though He's a man like us, in the sense that He lives and He dies, and He becomes ill and He's healthy, and He goes through the stages of life like us, He's a human being, He's not an angel or another creature, or He has no divinity in Him, but He receives revelation from Allah. And He's a prophet of Allah. And He doesn't speak about His own desires. Whatever He says is revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In matters dealing with religion. So, therefore, we accept what He says and we obey that, because Allah has told us this. Now, this is different to answer Him. But if a person just wants to argue and debate and so forth, but you just tell them the Sunnah. And just not... So the point is that, yes, I mean, what you mentioned about the scholar, the book al-Barbahari, I don't remember this incident, per se, but let's say, whether this or another incident, it's true. A person should not open his heart up, his hearing up, to the people and the teachings of the people of Bid'ah. This is without doubt. But we're not talking about that. What we're talking about is abandoning them as a means of punishment. Like you walk down the street, you see a brother, and he goes to, Masjid Muhammad, for instance. And you see the brother walking, has his Muslim journal in his hand and his kufi on his head, and you say, oh, this guy, I'm not going to say salam to him. He's a person of bid'ah. Is this permissible here? Yes or no? Well, there are some times when this thing is permissible in the Sharia. And those statements you find in the explanation of the creed show that. And what I mentioned in the lecture, adds to that. That if he was the only one in the whole city, doing that, and his faith was not so weak that by taking that position you'd be sending him even to more evil, but that he would realize, he says, well, these brothers, they don't like that, so I'm going to just give this up. And just instead of you walk around with my Muslim journal, I'll be walking, with my noble Qur'an underneath my arm. Now, in this case, this would be good to take this position, right? But if he's going down to that masjid, and there's, hundreds of people are going to be, showing up, or thousands of people, they even have a bigger jama'ah than we have, okay? And, he's still going to be, not just carrying his, but he's going to be distributing that. It makes no sense in this case, It goes against the teachings of the Sunnah in its essence. When you look at it, to take a position by not making salam to these people, not talking to these people, not buying from these people, and so forth. But rather, one should say salam to them, one should talk to them, one should visit them. If one of them dies, one can go to their janazah, in this case. if this is going to make them come closer to Sunnah. Because by keeping these relations, you have a chance to impress them. And I think probably all of us have at one time in our lives, right, that had people done hijr to us, we wouldn't be where we are today, right? I mean, we might have been at one time with one group or another and so forth, and had people taken this position towards us, had not somebody from the Sunnah come to us and, taught us with gentleness and spent the time to teach us and to take us out of that falsehood, we wouldn't be now striving to be up on the Sunnah. Okay, so this is the point. But that does not mean then that you go and you buy all their tapes, for instance, and their books, you know what I'm saying, and you put them at home in your library and start reading them and discussing. That's a completely different issue here. So about the issue about one's relationships with people, in terms of these people who are within the fold of Islam. And the same thing goes with other people who are like Sufis, you know what I'm saying, and other groups, people who follow things which have some deviation in it, like, let's say, things which we consider to be outside the Sunnah, like the Tablighi, like going out for 40 days. It's not in the Sunnah. And what is the position one takes concerning these brothers? Does one cut himself off from them and does not say salam to them and does not visit them, does not, buy from them, does not, talk to them and so forth? Well, if it's going to rectify them, and they would give this up, and they would only follow, they would stop this practice of going for 40 days, that's fine. But if it's not, because they're the majority, or because of knowledge is little, or that impiety is much, or sin, or ignorance, bid'ah is much, or their people, their faith is weak, and that by doing such you're going to result in that person going to worse. Unless somebody's new to Islam, and you take that type of position regarding him, it's going to result in him leaving the deen. Then in this case it's forbidden to do it. An example like the hudud. The Prophet forbade the application of the hudud on the battlefield. On the battlefield. If somebody commits zina on the battlefield, one does not apply the hudud upon them. If somebody drinks wine on the battlefield, one does not apply the hudud upon them. Why? Because to apply the hudud on them during the battlefield would result in them, maybe, right, getting angry and then going to the enemy, which would result in a greater harm here. Not only for that person, in the sense that they would result from going to the enemy, but also maybe for the Muslims. Because he might know something about the Muslims' battle strategy, their weaknesses, their strength, and tell that's the enemy. So here, to give up the hudud for that person is better than to apply the hudud in this case. And for this reason, in this case, it's permissible to, as the Prophet Sunnah shows, to hold back the hudud in this matter. Another example of the same principle. When the Prophet ﷺ, when the people made the lie about his wife Aisha radiallahu anha, one time during a battle, the Prophet ﷺ had his wives with him, and Aisha, she used to sit in an enclosed thing on top of a camel. Okay, but it was enclosed, so people would not be able to see her. Okay, and she was very small, so light, so nobody would know if she was on the camel or not. She lost the necklace, so she left went to get it, and the people thought that the army moved forth. The Prophet ﷺ would then, after they would leave an encampment, he would send people back to the camp and pick up anything the Muslims might have left behind. So when one of his companions came behind, he noticed somebody was there. It turned out to be Aisha radiallahu anha. So what is he going to do in this situation? Muslim woman, middle of the desert. She has no animals. The army has proceeded forward. And he's a young man, also she's a young girl. He rode her on the camel and just took the camel by its noose, or not noose, what do you call it? Rein, and just walked. Didn't say a single word. When they entered into Medina, the hypocrites found something they could talk about. And they tried to make it a scene that some sort of illicit sexual relations had occurred between Aisha and this young man. The Prophet ﷺ was very disturbed because he was being said something about his wife. He did not know what to do. Should he divorce her? Should he, keep her? What to do? I mean, he was just the Prophet ﷺ did not know. Until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the verses clearing Aisha radiallahu anha and putting the regulation that those who spread this lie were to be whipped for falsely accusing a Muslim woman, and that their testimony would never be accepted ever again. Now, the Prophet ﷺ applied these hudud. When it came to the leader of the Munafiqeen, Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul, he was this leader of the Munafiqeen. The Ansar were two groups, Al-Aws and Al-Khazraj, and he was from one of the two groups. And also, he had a position before the Prophet ﷺ came, that he was about to become the king of Medina. And between both parties of the Ansar, there used to be a lot of friction and warfare before Islam. So, when it came time to whip him, and he was the leader of the hypocrites, one of the companions, of the Prophet's companions, but who was from the other tribe of the Ansar, said, with him, he was from them. His tribesmen, who were also from the Prophet's companions, said, you only said this because he was from our tribe. And had he been from your tribe, you would not have said this. The other companion said, you are a hypocrite, you like to argue on behalf of the hypocrite. And they almost started to fight between themselves, and they were the leaders of their, branches of the tribes of the Ansar, and also were people of high status among the Prophet's companions. So what did the Prophet ﷺ do to push the situation off? He didn't apply the hudud on Abdullah ibn Ubay and calm the situation down. So here's a had, a punishment which was revealed in the Qur'an regarding a lie which was said against the Prophet's wife. And the Prophet ﷺ had applied this punishment against other people when it came to him, because it was going to result in a greater evil in the conflict between the Ansar themselves. And this evil is greater than the punishment of this man. The Prophet ﷺ dropped the punishment upon this person. Yes, some of the Shia, they accuse Aisha of that, And whoever accuses Aisha of that is an unbeliever, because Allah cleared her in the Qur'an. And also because by accusing Aisha of that, you accuse, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, because, if the Messenger's wife was, having relations with somebody else, the blame falls back on him also, in one way. The shame comes back to him. And also the Christians like to bring up this issue, sometimes to attack Islam. They always see the wife of your prophet, has been accused of such and such. But there's a good refutation for that. One of the scholars one time, he was responding to one of the Christian kings regarding this, and his name is Al-Baqilani. And he said that when they said the Christian king, head of the Christians, accused Aisha of that. He said, what kind of religion you have, and the wife of your prophet has been accused of that. So, Al-Baqilani said, 2 women have been accused of having sex, and they were innocent. One of them became pregnant and had a child, and one of them didn't. The king understood the issue and became quiet. What does it mean, in case some brothers didn't pick it up? The 2 women are Mary, the mother of Jesus, and also Aisha radiallahu anha. Mary, the mother of Jesus, she was accused by the Jews, and until today is accused of having illicit sex. But yet she became pregnant, and she had a child. Aisha was accused of the same thing, and yet she was not pregnant. So if you're going to accuse Aisha, then the same accusation would fall more on Mary. So when Al-Baqilani said 2 women were accused of this in history, one of them became pregnant, the king understood, and he became very quiet. So This is just something in case any Christian tries to attack Islam, you have a proof.